Thanks for joining us, guys. We're just getting started with broadcasting to YouTube. It'll just take a moment. All right, it looks like we are live on YouTube. Let me just get the link, make sure everyone else can join and share. I see some attendees filling in here. Okay, and I'm going to share this YouTube link over and we'll get started. Sorry about the delay as we fill people in here.
That's fine.
Cool, let's hit it. All right, hello, welcome to the pNetwork community call. I think this is community call 8, which is probably right on track. We're moving right along. We have a lot to talk about today, and of course we have a featured guest. But before we get started, I'm going to introduce myself and explain a little bit about today's call. I'm Robin. I work in community and marketing here for pTokens and pNetwork. And we also have here founder Thomas Bertani.
Hello, everyone.
Head of Operations, Alice Corsini.
Hi.
And we have our special guest, Alessio Delmonti of PieDAO.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So as we continue on, anyone viewing and the attendees on Zoom, or if you're watching on YouTube or another platform, feel free to ask questions. We'll be sure to port it over to the team so you can get in on the Fireside chat, anything that you're curious about with pNetwork or PieDAO. If you're in Zoom, just throw it in the Q&A section below and we will get to it all at the end of the call. And you can also pop into our Telegram channel, which has recently been renamed. It's t.me/pNetworkDefi, and you'll find the whole team there. If you're unfamiliar with pNetwork, we are the heartbeat of cross-chain composability, DeFi composability, I like to say. It's an evolving network on governance layer 2 P tokens, which enables users to move any crypto asset across any blockchain. So we're the team behind pBTC, which brings Bitcoin to Ethereum, and EOS, and pLTC, which brings Litecoin to Ethereum. And we're very excited about that. We recently introduced our governance token, PNT, which is the pNetwork token. And also, we launched the pNetwork DAO, which is currently in Epoch 3, Epoch being 2-week periods. So with all those different names and pieces in the pNetwork ecosystem, that maybe takes us to our first bit of news. You may have noticed that we changed our community channel names and kind of put everything under one umbrella of the pNetwork. So pTokens, Twitter has become pNetwork DeFi, and a number of our channels have been rebranded to pNetwork. We wrote a blog post kind of relaying our logic behind this and how we're kind of all in for pNetwork. So I'll be sure to share those links throughout the call and you guys can stay updated. And to celebrate our growth and the name change, tomorrow we're going to be launching a giveaway of $600 USD in PNT. And you can take a look for any news on that on our channels. I'll be sure to link. In other news, we have some exciting things happening with pBTC. I'll kick it over to Alice, and you can kind of go over some other bites of news for us.
Yes, thank you, Robin. And thank you everyone for joining us. So let's start with a great achievement for our community. So in case you didn't notice, the total value locked in pTokens has now surpassed $1.5 million. locked in the system. As a cross-chain bridge, pTokens connects a variety of blockchain ecosystems, and specifically today in production on mainnet, we have pBTC on ETH, pBTC on EOS, and pLTC on ETH. pBTC alone contributes with more than 128 pBTC locked in the pToken system. So that's a lot. That's really a lot. And those are split across 427 different Ethereum addresses that are using the system today. So we are very happy to welcome all of these people within the pNetwork, and we hope to grow even more. So this is a great achievement, and what you can do with pTokens today. So pTokens are actually integrated in a variety of DeFi protocols already. So you can use it to experience the DeFi roller coaster, I would say. So yeah, thank you everyone for helping us to reach this milestone, 1.5 million. That's really great. So we are really proud of it. And I wanted to share this, enthusiasm and achievement with everyone in our community that contributed to this success. But even though this is a great achievement, we actually want to move that amount even higher. So we have some initiatives that we are working on. This includes more integrations for pTokens, as well as the integration with other platforms. So for example, we are creating some liquidity mining initiatives for you to enjoy, and for the whole DeFi ecosystem to enjoy. One of these specifically is for pLTC, as voted during our first DAO vote. So we have opened a proposal on the Curve forum. Curve is a decentralized exchange, and it has liquidity pools that can be incentivized. It has proven itself to be a great gateway to onboard new users into the DeFi ecosystem, and that's why we thought that integrating pTokens with Curve will be a great idea. The proposal that we have opened is specifically on creating an LTC pool on Curve. The pool would be for pLTC against SLTC. SLTC is the LTC representation, is the synthetic representation of Litecoin on Ethereum that's created by the Synthetics team. And this pool, if approved, if the community likes it, will be kicked off with liquidity incentives directly in pLTC. So you will be receiving for every LTC that you lock in the system, even more LTC as a reward, for the kickoff of the pool. So if this sounds like something interesting to you, I invite all of you to join the conversation on the Curve forum and share your feedback. Robin will share with you the link in the chat so that you can go there and like, comment, whatever, and share your interest. So to wrap up, a brief recap of our Epoch 2 that has ended end of last week. So there are over 36 million PNT locked in the pNetwork DAO today. During the this is 57% of the entire PNT supply. So this is really great, and we're very happy that the community is engaged with the project. During the last epoch, the DAO has voted in favor of subsidizing the gas costs for DAO stakers and DAO voters who participate actively in the DAO via ADO. So we are creating even more incentives for everyone to join in the pNetwork ecosystem and to participate in the pNetwork DAO. So we are looking forward to have even more community members joining in and helping out with the success of the project. Another great thing that happened during Epoch 2 is actually coming from another great DAO in the ecosystem, which is pieDAO. They launched DeFi Plus S. This is a new index of the pieDAO family. And we have today as a guest Alessio from the pieDAO team. So I'm sure that he will share more on this later in this call. So Alessio, welcome, and feel free to introduce yourself to everyone here. And I will pass the mic to Thomas and Alessio for a fireside chat.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm happy to to be here. Some of you might remember that we already did this also on the pieDAO side. So we had Thomas in the past explaining what pNetwork is about. It was a very exciting chat. So I'm very happy to return the favor and talk a little bit about pieDAO. So my name is Alessio Delmonti. I've been involved in pieDAO since the very beginning. We think about pieDAO as an asset allocation DAO, and we really have this strong mission in basically bringing tokenized asset allocation as a DeFi primitive, pretty much. So we've been working on a number of different indexes. Some of you might remember BTC++. I think for a little while it's been the largest holder of pBTC. And now you guys are obviously growing. So we've been adopting the pNetwork technology real quick. And now we are excited to basically roll out a few new allocations. One of these is DeFi Plus S. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but just to spend a couple of words, it's basically one of the sub-indexes of a larger index called DeFi++, which includes a number of DeFi tokens, including PNT.
Excellent. So, well, first of all, thanks, Alice, for doing a review of the recent developments, and thanks again, Alessio, for taking the time to join this call. It's great to have you here. And yeah, I think you have given a good introduction to the project. Something that I think was missing, so I will ask you straight away, is if you could maybe tell us a little bit more of what your role within pieDAO is. You call yourself the coordinator. So what is a coordinator of pieDAO? And if you can maybe, along with this, explain the role of the DAO within pieDAO, I think it will be great. Since it's something that is partially in common with pNetwork. So we are both Aragon based. So I will expand this later, but maybe if you can start introducing better your role and the role of the DAO, I think the audience will have a little bit more clearer idea in mind on the topics we are gonna dive into later.
Absolutely. So, well, basically, what I do personally is to really coordinate efforts within the pieDAO community and to make sure, things may happen. I try to, throw around as much as ideas, and to provide some leadership in terms of the vision of where we are heading. As I've been there since the very beginning with a number of other team members, and I'm also part of the core team, which means we also develop part of the technology, both in terms of smart contracts and front-end applications. Besides that, I also try to help as much as I can from community management and the kind of spreading the word of what pieDAO is trying to achieve and what the DAO goals are. So the DAO it really started with the idea that we want to have community governed index, right? There are a number of solutions out there which are mostly handled by very few people, and we really wanted to have decentralized autonomous governance working on the allocation of these tokenized indexes. And in terms of how that developed, I think like if you want to give a little bit of history, like our first implementation of these indexes came out as, I think, the first smart pool implementation within the Balancer ecosystem. If you guys are familiar with, are not familiar with, what Balancer is basically one of these AMM, similar to Uniswap, a little bit smarter in terms that it's multidimensional and you can have uneven weights within the different pools. So we really like that concept, and we took it, on our own, and basically we developed the first implementation of smart pools, which introduce a number of different functionality, and also enables the DAO to actually control those liquidity pools, which means pDAO is in control of every parameter which is related to tokens created by pDAO, which we call Pi. It means it can change the weight. It means it can, add or remove tokens. It means it can, trigger rebalancing. And besides that, introduces a number of security features, including circuit breakers and a few other security features in terms of caps and so on and so forth. So pDAO really has born like a governance layer on top of these indexes and liquidity pools. And that was like, I'd say, step one. Now we are, sort of expanding the offering on a number of other things. Like we always been thinking about introducing new features regarding, this index. One of the things I'm very excited to see, which is in the work right now, is meta governance for token within the index. So as you might understand, a lot of these indexes like DeFi plus S will contain a number of DeFi tokens which are used for governance, like PNT is one of these, right? So it will be a real shame if, like those tokens will be wasted in terms of governance power. So we have been working on how to retain governance power by holding the index. And that's what we call meta governance, which is something we're going to hopefully see pretty soon. So by holding the index, we will be able to basically join a multiple, like a set of different DAOs with just one by using the governance token of pDAO. Besides, like does a number of other things, which is deciding on each one of the allocation and introducing new tokens, but also managing basically the budget of the DAO itself. One last thing, which is going to be introduced fairly soon with the new introduction of the token, which is migrate very soon, and I think we're going to talk about that maybe later, is this price at some point, if the governance, like actually decides to do so, will be able to charge fees on the TVL of the Pi itself. So that would be very interesting because people basically sitting liquidity into this thing can then, DAO members can then actually retain the fees which are charged on top of the Pis, which is going to be a very interesting evolution from a technical perspective, and it will enable some game theoretical gains to actually make this Pi bigger over time.
How, out of curiosity, like how would those like fees be charged? Because I've read something like on your material saying that the fees would potentially stay in the different tokens that are within the Pis. So I've read something saying that basically it means that your governance token may represent by itself a very diversified portfolio because of that. Can you explain that better?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, so take something like DeFi plus S, right? DeFi plus S, and again, like it's a diversified index, which gives you exposure to a number of different DeFi projects, including AMM, as we have Balancer into it, zkRollups, as there's C, derivatives, UMAs in there, interoperability, PNT, but also REN and asset management through Melon. Now, all these assets are basically bundled together into this token, which is called DeFi plus S, which acts as a liquidity pool only when the DAO decides to rebalance it. Now, as token basically aggregate within this Pi, a streaming fees is now possible to be instantiated by the DAO, which has not been the case so far. Like we never did it for BTC++ or USD++ or some other tokens before. But now the technology is there, and if the DAO decides to do it, what is going to happen is they are going to decide a percentage fee on top of the TVL of the Pi. Let's say it's 1%, which gets calculated linearly across an entire year. Which means like if anybody can call the claim function within the Pi, and if it was 1% and you called it after 6 months, then 0.5 will be charged within the pie. Now, since all this will eventually aggregate within the DAO vault, DAO token holders basically own the DAO vault. So what that means is if the pies grow bigger, like over time, we will see the DAO vault growing over time in a diversified, balance sheet by itself, which I think is going to be pretty interesting because it's kind of a meta game where the more pies we have, the more diversification the DAO vault gets.
Interesting. We will come back to like pies later. I had some questions around like your experience with coordinating the efforts of the DAO specifically. Something interesting that was released recently by the Aragon team is like a technique to vote off chain and basically have kind of an oracle that basically reports on chain the aggregated result and can be challenged by anyone on chain in case the result doesn't sum up for external observers. Yet currently both the pNetwork DAO and the PieDAO are basically using in our case, it's a small modification of like the standard voting app. I'm not sure if the PieDAO has just vanilla voting or if it is modified, but in any case, from my understanding, it's like fully on chain. So people have to vote on chain, and given like the hot topic of the moment, one of the hot topics, which is the skyrocketing gas prices. I was wondering if you guys had were thinking about starting to use that, or what was your thinking in general about moving like votes off chain?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think gas prices are definitely one of the biggest challenges in DAO governance right now. I think communities can coordinate pretty easily, like on offline channels. Like that's something that happened a number of times, within our Discord community. Like people will just, vote very easily, but it becomes very hard when it comes on chain. And gas prices are so high right now, so it's sort of expensive sometimes. Like especially if you're, if you're going to be like a fairly active DAO. Like I think in the few months we've been around, we made more than 300 votes, which is a lot. So yeah, sometimes it can be a little tricky. So the initiative you're talking about, I think, is extremely exciting. It's called Snapshot. It's based on Snapshot, which was a technology developed by the Balancer team, like in the first place, and especially Fabian, which I say hi to, is also a PieDAO member, if I recall correctly. So it's a very interesting concept because basically what they're going to do is use signatures in order to verify that people actually owned the token at the time of voting, and eventually cryptographically verify that into some other servers, and then you can submit the vote on chain later, and then you can use Aragon Court for disputes. So that's something that we are definitely interested in exploring more, and we hope that that way like governance can go even more smoothly. Like something we've been doing recently is to start to subsidize gas fees for voting, and that's actually a trial run that we are doing this week, and see how that goes. But I'm excited to see, like I've been engaging with the Aragon team about this new offline app, and if the community wants it, I'm very happy that for PieDAO to adopt it. I think it's going to be a great improvement. Are you guys thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The main challenge for us is the fact that like the reward system that we have designed for incentivizing active participation within DAO is dependent on the votes each user has casted. So it's important that that information sits on chain in order for the current smart contract to work correctly. So if we had to move voting off chain, this information will be missing. And I mean, it's not a big deal because we could potentially move the rewards distribution to a similar approach. Yet it would require things to be rewarded a little bit. So we will consider it in the future. Right now, what we have done is something that basically enables we have basically optimized to the I think maximum theoretical limit the gas costs for reporting voting for users. For instance, we have a way to collect signatures off chain, and we send them on chain in a batch, and that batch ends up costing a little bit less than the normal voting for each user. And as you said, we also subsidize that cost. And so the vast majority, like 90% plus of users, are currently voting via this subsidized alternative to the legacy one. Yet people can still vote normally and just submit the vote on chain themselves. Basically, the way we subsidize it is by acting as a relayer. So we collect signatures and send them in batches on chain.
Gotcha.
What about PieDAO? As for like, you said that an experiment is gonna start shortly around this subsidy of voting fees. How is it? How do you plan to have it working? Like,
so we're actually going to keep it simple for now. Like, we're actually going to keep it simple for now. Basically, just decide a time window, which is going to be like a start block or an end block, and then we are going to do refunds more than actually like putting in advance the if which is needed. I think like most of our users are if older, which is great. So like they should be able to vote, generally speaking. But we want to kind of go easy on that side, like, because there are a lot of little holders that eventually will think it's not worth to vote on chain, generally speaking, which obviously is not okay, right? We don't like that. So I think we're going to run this first experiment, see how that goes with the refunds, and then eventually, I think actually the off-chain voting app is going to come out sometime next week. And my understanding is that they will be fully compatible with our current DAO structure. So if that is the case, I think I'm going to put out a proposal to adopt it as soon as possible. Because like,
so how would it work? Like the DAO, would you open like a DAO voting to see if the community is in support of having the DAO subsidizing this?
No, I mean, like, we already did that, right? Like, and we are kind of agreed that we are going to be found within these time windows. Like, but I was talking specifically about the off-chain voting thing. So my understanding is that it's going to come out sometime next week. So if that is going to be the case, I know also other DAOs are adopting it. Wi-Fi is one of it. And so if that is the case, I think I'm going to put out a proposal to adopt it as well on PieDAO. I think we should do it, and it's going to be great. Like, we want everybody to feel represented, and also to make sure they have the resources to vote, because it's getting like, I don't think gas prices are going to go lower anytime soon, right? Like, I think we are going to consistently be in a 500 to maybe 700, 1,000 GUI range. So yeah, we need to act quickly on that.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, one challenge that we I would call it a dilemma we had was like trying to understand if it made sense for even for the DAO, in principle, to subsidize gas costs that were clearly higher in value, like in USD terms, than the actual governance token value being held by the voter. So let's say the voter has $1 worth of the governance token.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to spend like $5 for a single vote? This is not a simple question, in my opinion, because it shows that the user is not really committing much.
So why should that's also a discussion we also had, like in our Discord channel. Obviously, someone was pointing out that might not be worth it. Like, I still think like we're gonna do a small trial, which is like only 1 week long. So in that moment, we don't want to optimize like for outcome, but more for participation. Like, if that is gonna work out okay, like maybe we can design some new constraints, which actually makes more sense. But for now, like, we're gonna keep it very open and just see if the entire, if this entire initiative works the way it's supposed to. We've been trying to be very iterative, like on that perspective, and I think it's the right approach, and to go step by step.
Yeah, makes sense, definitely. And last question around voting. You said that you have as a DAO casted started hundreds of votes, right? Voting proposals, which is astonishing. So can you maybe share some other numbers like this, since I know that PieDAO is doing great on the community front. So it would be amazing to know, for instance, how many users do normally vote, how much of the discussion is happening on Discord, and how much happens, do things normally match or don't they? Because, you know, in chats and community channels, it's very easy to drive the conversation to the opinion of the people that make more noise, you know, normally, while maybe this may not match with the biggest, governance token holders. So, what's your experience?
Yeah, no, that's like, I think we didn't have many controversial votes. I think we didn't have almost any controversial votes right now, and which is great. Like, we always been thinking about governance as a, especially on-chain governance as an authorizing effect. So like something that we've been experimenting before, like we have a specific channel on Discord, which is called governance polls. And then we almost, always run governance polls off-chain, kind of, in order to get a sentiment of what's going on. And eventually, if there is no, big controversy, eventually we actually run that on chain. And I think, I really like the concept of notarization, like in terms of on-chain governance, right? Because we are not in the condition to run everything through governance like by themselves. So we want to get those things like, as much support as it can possibly be before actually triggering the vote. And I think that's the right way to do it, and it's working out pretty much okay. We also have a governance forum. I wouldn't say that's worked as well as the Discord channel. I think the Discord channel is definitely working better. Like people seems to coordinate more, like on day-to-day chat compared to async communication through forums. So yeah, like I think every community is different in some ways. Like, and I need to find the right tooling. I know, like, I think you guys are big on Tele, for instance. I am not sure like that work out very well for us. Instead, Discord seems to be okay-ish. We also try to do like fairly often like community calls like you guys do, either on a weekly basis, and then we do like a recap on a monthly basis, so we can discuss like issues at end, like, or some big things happening, which they help a lot. But we didn't see many controversial votes, which is great, and hopefully we're not gonna see many of them like in the future. That being said, like we are still in a fairly small community right now, so I am actually quite excited to see as the community grows, especially with the DAO token conversion, like the opening up like of the distribution through a bunch of things, including liquidity mining, how that that's gonna be. Because I think like right now there has been like a very core component of the community which has been close since the very beginning, which is pretty much aligned with everything. So we're gonna see how that happens when the community expands.
Yeah,
I think you guys have a like way larger community, right? So like I'm not surprised if there is any some controversy around that.
Yeah, I mean, our community is actually still relatively small, so I think we should improve on that front. But we are doing good progress. So this is like it's quite interesting to have started the DAO voting proposals recently. We have just done 2 votes so far, and the votes actually are helping a lot to see how people behave when they need to interface with the DAO, because they normally see the vote, do their homework, get the discussion started, try to understand what's the challenge, what's being discussed. So I think it's interesting to also see the community is getting increasingly is diving increasingly deeper and deeper to understand better the nuances and all the the complexities of the interactions with the other projects or of the project itself, of the DAO, and all these new challenges that really in many cases are new into this ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's really the power of DAOs, right? Like I like to describe this concept as decentralized risk assessment, which is like something I've been exposed to like through MakerDAO for a very long time. Like I've been a MakerDAO member for a while, like, and a few other DAOs, like, and I've been seeing a number of times people like popping out when things, they thought things weren't right, and basically saying, hey, you know what, guys, like these are my models, this is not right? Like you should consider this, this, and that, right? And basically the entire community has been, shifting opinion, like because of that. And I think that's extremely powerful, because like if everybody has skin in the game to make the project succeed, then like you will possibly get the best outcome, right? It's not a guarantee, but like probably speaking, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I've been seeing that like in a bunch of other communities, right? Not necessarily with on-chain governance. I think this idea running through rough consensus is something that, the guys at Synthetics at Kane specifically has been doing very well. Like, there are a lot of proposals which has been passing, and, Kane was fairly against it, but like anybody made a, very good point, like, and the entire community got, backing them, which is great. Like this is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. You've mentioned like a couple of times now the migration of the DAO token. Can you maybe explain a little bit better, why you're doing this migration and what it will what comes along with that migration?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So basically, the way PieDAO has been instantiated is through DAO. The governance token is called DAO, and it's always been non-transferable, right? Like the idea behind the DAO token at the very beginning was to only leave like and function with PieDAO ecosystem, and that's been like that for a while. And we might say, okay, maybe in the future, like we're gonna make it that transferable at some point, wherever the time is gonna be. And as things have been eating up a lot. And like a few community members like have been, feeling strongly like that was the time to actually make that token transferable, which I think is going to be pretty exciting because he opens the community, like, and it might make it larger by order of magnitude. And one of the reasons why the case is that obviously the idea of liquidity mining came out, right? And then the vast majority of the projects has been putting out incentives and designing incentives for people to use their own project, which I think is exciting in many ways. And it's also been working fairly well, right? Like we know liquidity, liquidity is not very sticky, like, and that's not necessarily as loyalty to some degree, but it's still interesting to see, right? And it's like a great way to present your project to a number of different people. Now, because of those reasons, some people in the community started designing incentive mechanism for the pies, like, and in order to do that, we needed to have a transferable token. So for that, like, we've been developing what we call the migration app, and the migration app will enable people to migrate their DAO token V1 to DAO token V2, which is going to be transferable. This is actually built like through a custom Aragon app, which anybody can use if if they are looking to migrate their own tokens into Aragon. It uses basically Merkle root verifications to do that, and anybody's it's basically free to migrate to whatever token, whatever amount of token they have vested until that moment. And what that entitles is like DAO will be transferable, and that will enable PieDAO to design incentives for minting pies and for you, which I think is going to be exciting to watch.
Interesting. Is there like any side effect you could find around making like that receipt, let me call it a receipt token transferable? And there is the main reason why I'm asking is that by default Aragon doesn't make it transferable. So I was wondering if you could find any reason why it wasn't a good idea.
So we've been looking on it for quite a while, right? Like you are right, like Aragon doesn't make it transferable by its own. So we actually had to deploy a different token, right? And that's why this is called DAO V2. Now DAO V2, it's still a mini-me token. If you guys are not familiar with it, but basically any Aragon token is a mini-me token. And basically the only difference between a regular ERC20 and a mini-me token is that it has a function which will tell you the balance at a specific block, right? So eventually, because we are instantiating a new voting app, there will be no consequences between the two of them. But we also wanted to find a way to basically bridge the voting weights between the DAO V1 and DAO V2, right? Because like that might happen over time. And that might be actually interesting for if you're like a DAO freak because we eventually had to develop like a new piece, which is called, we call it PieCrust. And PieCrust is a very interesting piece of technology because it basically enables you to come out with a voting weight, which is based on a number of mini-me tokens. In our case, it will be only DAO v1 and DAO v2. But like, for instance, like we could make a DAO which is partially governed by DAO tokens and pNT, as far as they are mini-me token, right? Like you could do that with a number of other tokens, as long as they are mini-me. So this piece basically bridges the two tokens together, and it's actually kind of an abstract mini-me by itself, without balance, right? So like it will dynamically look at the balances of DAO v1 and DAO v2, come out with your vote weights. That way we feel it's it was the best way to do it. We are not touching DAO v1 in any way. We are deploying a new token and people can migrate it from one to the other. Like, and basically the migration app will have permission to burn the DAO v1 token and issue the DAO v2 tokens at the same time.
By the way, I love the names that you guys are giving to all these different components. I think they are amazing, like Trust and all these other names you guys have. Can we dive deeper now into like some pies? For instance, you mentioned DeFi plus S
and DeFi plus L,
yeah, plus L, and you have a few others like BTC++, USD++, and there are more coming. Like you said, the DAO is in charge of the different parameters that you have, so they can be changed. I guess the allocation, for instance, or the fee in case there is any fee to be added or changed. Like, what about starting new pies? Like, who does the DAO decide also on that front, or is the DAO started differently and then migrated onto the DAO? How does it work? Because I think there are some complexities, right, with the bootstrapping of a pie, most likely.
There is indeed some complexity, and I think a lot of the complexity is really related to the underlying analysis of all of these different tokens, right? Like some people, I mean, I know you know it very well, but like tokens are not created equal. Like from a technical perspective, like many, very often, which sometimes might, come up with some challenges. But obviously, as these are portfolio allocation, there are also, market consideration in terms of, is that token liquid enough? What is the kind of liquidity that we're looking for? Can this pie scale up to, to what point? So in terms of creation of the pie, like this has been basically community based. Like we've been proposing like a number of them. And now I'm happy to see that a bunch of people are actually coming out with a few different proposals. I think there is a very interesting DSR proposal. There is like a most recently UTXO proposal, which is actually based on P tokens, which is, if I recall correctly, 70% PT and pLTC. So the way this works usually is people engage either in the Discord channel or in the forum, coming out with some sort of allocation that they think might be beneficial. Like, and then as a community, we look at all the nitty-gritty details of the, the allocation itself. We understand the technical feasibility, and then if it's technically feasible and from a market perspective it makes sense, then like a proposal gets put out, right? And then if that is the case, like the DAO basically deploys it. I think that this part of the analysis is interesting to watch because people might not realize that sometimes, like there are some challenges, right? Like, and I'm gonna make an example. Each one of these tokens that you put within a pie, you basically need to audit, right? Like you cannot just blindly put it there, thinking, okay, it's an ERC20 token, right? Because like some stuff might happen. And for instance, for DeFi plus L, like the original location was designed to contain, fair amount of land token. And because obviously land is a very hot, DeFi project, like it makes sense to be there. It's blue, so like it's great. And I was very excited to have land over there. Like eventually we had to audit the entire token and eventually find out they had nitty-gritty details into the code, which doesn't allow for zero transfer, which will basically make it incompatible within the B pool technology of balancer, right? So that couldn't be added. So if people deployed that themselves without really thinking about it, like they could have ended up with a, you know, with a lot of money stuck, right? So I think that that's where like really this decentralized risk assessment process, you know, it's valuable. And yeah, like from that perspective, technical and from a market-wise perspective.
Yeah, interesting. That's like a great example of like something that may have gone wrong and that like could be avoided because of the interventions of few. Because maybe, you know, a DAO vote would have said differently. Who knows?
Oh yeah,
it's
like
really
and
hard
there is
to
also
tell.
like some other cases like which I think you know, the value of pies have been showing up from a security perspective. I recall, and I think you guys recall it as well. You mentioned you know, BTC++, like BTC++, for the ones who don't remember, is a weighted allocation within different representation of Bitcoin in the Ethereum network. One of the token which was in there was BTC, right? And you guys might recall that something happened with it. I think it was the end of April, right? Like, and then, you know, back then, because the DAO had control over the pies, like we could actually took measures. Like I recall, like I was, you know, waking up in the, you know, during the night, like nobody knew what was going on. We actually use, you know, a software which is, you know, fairly common for Surgeon. So like you can send like a metal, like, and that will remove all, like we have this kind of alerts thing going on. But yeah, like eventually, because we didn't know what was going on, like if funds were stolen or anything like that, we were trying to engage with the teams. We could actually, you know, act quickly, pause trading within the pie, which also means like if there was any stolen funds, they couldn't have, you know, go through the pie itself. And then we set the cap to 0, which wouldn't be possible like in a regular liquidity pool, right? Which also means no stolen funds can be added to the pool, right? And then because of some of the peculiarities within the you know, Pi smart contract itself, during that drama, like AMMs frozen transfer, right? And I think there are two things which are interesting to understand regarding BTC++. Is one, like BTC++ will stay liquid by itself, right? Because it's a token itself. So like it could be, there was other type of ways to exit. But also we also added some security functionality that if any token is frozen within the Pi, like everybody can actually exit the Pi by sort of taking a loss on the frozen token, but still get all the tokens back, which is not possible in regular balancer pool. Like if one
so
of the
you can
tokens
say like
frozen,
exclude one token when withdrawing from the Pi.
Exactly, we call it exit at a loss because we were, and that's something that eventually, you know, came out again from technical assessment balancer pool, right? Like we looked at this thing and say, you know, we can do better than this, right? Like let's add these security features on top.
Very interesting. Yeah. Also because basically, yeah, I mean, in like a situation where there is a crisis or something that wasn't like unforeseen, I think those kind of functionalities are what, you know, would make you know, really the difference between like a 100% loss or funds being stuck forever potentially, and people being able to recover possibly, you know, the majority of their stake, why not the entire thing. So I'm not sure about
Absolutely.
like did you like do some assessments of like competitors of PieDAO to see like if such advanced features are commonly available or not? Because this specific thing you mentioned, I never heard of, and I think it's really interesting.
Like I think we are possibly like the only custom implementation of smart pools right now in Balancer. Like most recently, the Balancer team has been coming out with a different type of pools, which is called configurable weights, which is something we've been working together for a while, and we actually deployed, you know, we kind of deployed it a little bit before they did, but we've been like very close in developing this thing, and like we've been sharing a lot of code, which is nice. Like we've been very close during the development cycle. I am not aware of many others doing these kind of things. We also been considering a few other asset management platform. Like I really want to say like PieDAO is very agnostic in terms of the platform, right? Like its product is mostly the governance layer, like on top of the allocations. Like so, while we think Balancer is great, like I foreseen that, you know, I can see like in the future happening that in many different ways, right? And there are some custom implementation of pools happening already. And that's because we wanted to kind of bypass some of the limitations that you cannot really, like for instance, this meta governance thing I was mentioning before. I think that is going to be very interesting, but that does require custom technology, right? Like if we want the pool to be able to vote, for instance, in the PNT DAO, like we cannot do that through balancing. So we need to do it some other way.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's going to be exciting because I'm very convinced that, this kind of index LP structure attract, a huge amount of legacy capital, right? Like, and that's already happening. Like you look at the growth of Balancer, you look at the growth of some other DAO there, like, they are now managing, billions sometimes, right? And because it just makes sense, right? Like you put these things into this thing, it's a set and forget stuff. You will rebalance on its own. Like you also get, rewards for doing that. Great. But now you're missing out on a number of other things, which is governance rewards. You guys are a good example for that, right? You are incentivizing people to join the DAO. People can stake, they can get PNT tokens for doing that. They shouldn't lose those tokens only because they're participating to a liquidity pool. They should be able to exercise that power. So we're moving towards that, which I think is going to be very cool to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it because like something that we have recently developed in the very first version of like Steroids, which is a yield farming platform basically that we built. It's like an adapter for Aragon where you can actually like if you add liquidity on say Uniswap for PNT against, I don't know, USDT or ETH, you get a specific UniV2 token back, and you can potentially put that one at stake within the DAO rather than PNT. And what the DAO does is basically evaluating at any point in time how many PNT each UniV2 is worth, and giving you like the receipt token DAO PNT in return in a way which is variable. So your balance changes depending on the like balancing of on the ratio basically of the Uniswap pool. So that's like a first experiment we have done on that front.
Yeah, I actually saw that,
composability.
and I thought it was very exciting. Like because I mean, LP like staking, I think it's going to be, something that we're going to see a lot in the future, like a lot more. Like we already see it like all the time, and that's something that PieDAO is also going to do for its own pies, because it's a great way to bootstrap liquidity. Makes a lot of sense, right? And so I was actually looking through the code of the Steroids app, and I thought that was very interesting. I think we are trying to do like a slightly more generalized approach because we want to apply that basically to the index, right? And that will require a little bit more work to some degree because like every DAO is a little bit different, right? So like some will require you to be snapshot before the vote, some do not, right? Some will disburse the rewards immediately after, some will do that later. Like it's, each DAO is a little bit different, right? So eventually we will come out with specific adapter for each one of the DAO. But I think that, the fact that you guys did it for your own users, I think it's great. Like, and more DAOs should do that.
One last question before we move on to like questions from the community, if there is any, is like a little bit off topic, but not too much. I just want to know what's your like opinion on some projects like Clean Finance, starting to test in production, let's say the Binance Smart Chain as an alternative to mainnet gas prices. And along this question, like if you want, part 2 is, and what about having DAOs on things like the upcoming Aragon chain, for instance?
Yeah, look, so generally speaking, my opinion about, like, let's talk about testing prod first, right? I think testing prod, I think Andre in that fairly often, it's not supposed to be done like this, right? He always said like, I test in prod, but he also had like some security assessment happening before. Like I know for a fact he's been engaging, with auditors before. It just doesn't, publish the results, right? Which is something else. That being said, like a number of people felt like it was a great idea to just, deploy smart contracts. And I must say, I do feel the pain. right? Like I've been one of those builders which didn't deploy a number of different projects in the past because I felt it was too expensive, you know, to audit every little thing, right? So like they just faded away. Now, like a lot of these projects which are coming out, Cream included, are, you know, fairly often based on larger code base which have been, you know, with a lot of money audited by other people, right? Like I think, you know, Cream started as a fork of Compound, and eventually they forked Balancer as well, and then they're kind of putting all the things together, which is nice, but they also kind of leverage the previous audits. So while there are some changes, which should be audited as well, like it's going to be, you know, way less capital intensive for them to bring these products to market. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, right? Like I think they should do it. Like I think that's what open source is about, and I don't think, you know, forks are the issue. Regarding the scalability phase of it, I am interested to see how scalability will play out in the future, like more in the broad terms, like for effect a bunch of people. Like there is no clear winner right now, right? Like I think there are a number of candidates which are trying to, you know, get the attention to the community. Like I think Stake and the XDAI chain was definitely one of these. Like, and there's very interesting, you know, value proposition on their own. So yeah, so like we're gonna see how that develops. I think you know, optimistic rollups are gonna be big. Like the OVM is a very interesting technology. It's very secure. Like it's great. Like, and we are going, like, I think it's not quite there, like in terms of generalization, and that's something that they are working on very hard. And obviously we have like now a number of different you know, L2 solution, including the Binance chain, which are kind of coming to market and say, you know what, guys, like, you know, we have very solid infrastructure. Like we have ways to bridge liquidity. We can do a number of things, right? We are just going to deploy this EVM compatible chain. Why don't you deploy the things on our own? I think, generally speaking, if the security, let's say, like if the security measures are, you know, still consistent in terms that each one of the token are locked in layer one, and you know, there is way to make disputes, like that's fine. Like, and I think we are gonna see a number of projects definitely testing over there. I think Binance is pushing very hard for that. And I think that might be fine, like as long as, you know, the bridges are well designed. I think it's like the major point, right? And that's maybe something you guys can help with. Like you have been designing bridges for like one chain to another for a very long time. So, you know, we need you guys on that.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out. I think it's like seeing projects being forced out of Ethereum because of gas prices is not something anyone had foreseen happening that soon, at least not me. I think it happened way too early, and probably this was mostly driven by yield farming activities, really. So, and you know, by the rush in you know, finding the next promising like DeFi token. So this may be you know, something that will go away soon, but we have been saying this for a while and it didn't happen. It's actually constantly getting worse and worse. So I'm not sure that this will help much. But actually, if we look at gas costs, things like simple transfer movements, like for example of USDT, are still like keeping the network bandwidth busy, and like this is a big part of it. So if we could move like to layer 2, at least some of those, I'm sure people will be able to both like spend a little bit less and you know, be able to have faster transfers, and maybe avoid the Ethereum chain being that, you know, that bloated, so much bloated, and maybe DeFi projects that need, you know, interoperability and composability much will be able to stay on layer 1 for a little bit longer, while layer 2 becomes more and more mature. And personally, I like Loopring quite a lot, because I think it's like one of the most advanced right now that handles, you know, both transfers and
definitely
trades.
The most secure like layer 2 solution out there. You know, yeah, it's pretty great. Like I've been following Loopring for a very long time. Actually very happy to see like they've been evolved so much. You know, I built on Loopring DEX, like, you know, the very first version of the protocol, like some time ago, and now seeing moving them like on zkRollups, I think it's very exciting. But I think you made a great point, which is like the key issue here is composability, right? Like you know, the issue is like a stake that is composability. So like we might see a number of different projects like going a little bit into this sidechain or the other sidechain or whatever. Like, but if we cannot find as a community either the single sidechain we want to scale on, or ways to create composability through too, like you know, I don't think that is going to happen that much, right? Like it's you know, zkRollups are great, and I know they have plans to actually have more composability features, like in the version 3.6 of the protocol. So I'm excited to see how is that going to play out. But I don't think the DeFi community will give up on composability, because like we are really bridging together like so many protocols at this point. And that's also some of the thing which I was slightly concerned even in the past about ETH 2.0 and you know, the entire sharding design. And I think eventually they're gonna fix it by, you know, putting ETH 1.0 like into a giant shard, and that will work. But like we are gonna see either like, you know, preferred shards for DeFi project and then see a bunch of DeFi projects aggregating there, or preferred layer 2 solution where a bunch of other projects will follow them, right? Like it needs to be a clear winner, because we don't have a design which works, you know, for having like one in this sidechain, one in this other sidechain, and so on and so forth. Like that's not happening.
You lose atomicity and everything, so it's quite challenging right now. Yeah,
it is like, and a lot of this DeFi stuff is really, you know, based on it. So yeah, how are we gonna do without it?
Yeah, I agree. Makes sense. Cool. Very interesting discussion. Let's see if there are questions like from the community. In the meantime, while I look for questions, do you want to like share anything with the community that I've not asked you?
Yeah, before, like, while you see, you look at the question, let me see. I think there have been a couple of other exciting news, like in the PieDAO community, which I might take the chance to share. Like, we've been completely migrating to the new front-end application. I think one of the major feedback came out before was the fact that everybody wanted to have single asset entry. So basically Zap style ways of minting the pies, which is now something that's possible like in the new front-end at pools.piedao.org. So like you can mint any pie by only providing ETH or, and very soon, any other token.
So basically in that case, you provide like a component, like a smart contract you designed to basically automate like the entry with a single asset, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Just with
like,
ETH, right?
And it will actually source the liquidity from other DEXs, because like the standard way of doing single asset, and like in the balancer way, is to do it within the same assets of the pool. While our pools like also supports that, we eventually felt like if the pools are too small, then you're gonna end up like creating a massive slippage, which doesn't make sense. So eventually, what we did is to you know, connect it with other DEXs such as, you know, Uniswap and so on and so forth. So like you can just use a single asset entry, source liquidity from other places, and mint the pie by itself. And obviously that's a little bit expensive right now if you're doing that at 1000 way. But like it's the smoothest experience that you're gonna you know, you can possibly have.
Do you use things like you know, Chi token or other gas tokens to reduce the gas
Actually,
cost?
there is support for Chi token. Yes, like there is support for Chi token, and I'm gonna very soon put out a proposal to subsidize at least part of the cost through the Chi token. So like if the DAO agrees, we can actually source a bunch of Chi token, and then you know, half pay the gas right, for people. So there is support for that. Yeah.
Cool. A couple of questions from the. Well, sorry to interrupt. Did you want to add anything else?
No, besides that, like I just wanted to say like something else I'm very excited to see. Most recently, we have been seeing DAOs joining PieDAO. So like we're gonna see a DAO on DAO governance, and the DAO, I think it's probably the first Moloch DAO joining the governance of an Aragon DAO. So I'm quite excited to see how that develops. And yeah, for anything else, like you know, feel free to, you know, pop up in our community and you know, and ask questions. So like you will find a bunch of happening.
Actually, you have just partially answered one of the two questions we have, which was about it was like a user was asking the following: like DAOs continue to take over and new iterations are emerging, like for-profit DAOs. Do you think this is good for the DAO space and overall ecosystem?
So the short answer, I do think it's good. Like I'm gonna say, so let's put it this way: DAOs are a way to do human coordination, right? Like, and they do that like in a very specific ways, which is like extremely inclusive, like which is 24/7, has no geographic restriction of any kind, and you know, sometimes they embed game theory in order to do that. I think projects like DAOs are extremely interesting because they are trying to bridge the gap between on-chain organization and off-chain organization. I am not sure like people understand exactly the nitty-gritty details of that, as my understanding is the vast like in order for you to run a DAO, you actually need to have some off-chain structure which is already established, such a company or something like that. And basically that company has the mandate of operating the DAO on chain. So like there is still a little bit of, you know, of work to be done that way. I think I'm excited to see the opposite direction. Like you join the DAO and automatically you can, you know, sort of govern the off-chain organization. I think that is going to be great. But yeah, I think this is extremely good for the space. I think we're going to see a lot more for-profit DAO out there, and hopefully, you know, this creates an entire new, you know, way of organizing people and organization and assets, like, and all these kind of things, which is like way more free. It has no geographic restriction, and it's extremely inclusive. So I'm excited about that.
Cool. Yeah, it's
and
really
shout
exciting
out to the Aragon team, right? Because like they've been moving that thing forward like crazy.
Yeah. And for years. So, I mean, this has not been a recent effort. Why we are seeing the results just now?
Absolutely. Like Aragon team, good job. You know, shout out to Luke, which is a great researcher. We engage with him all the time. You know, Luis, obviously, which is also a PieDAO member. A bunch of other people, like, you know, keep crushing Jorg, like, you know, you're doing great. So keep doing your thing, guys.
Cool. So another question is, I'm not sure if this is for me or for you, but we'll see, is like, how will PieDAO help pNT get the visibility? Okay, I guess this is like a pNT holder asking like how the two projects can help each other. And I think maybe Alessio, then you can dive deeper, but I think you were saying yourself that for quite a long period, actually, PieDAO BTC++ has been the main holder of pBTC. So this is a great example of that. As the like DeFi plus S, Pi is another example where pNT is involved more directly. And you know, the interoperability of the DAOs that we have been discussing about for a while now, I think is something else that would be amazing to see going forward, and that I'm really excited to see like happening. So yeah, did I miss anything?
So no, yeah, I just want to, like, if I can add on that, like,
Sure.
to the answer of, I think the name was DeFi Nerd. So DeFi Nerd, like, I think cross-pollination of communities of like a very important aspects, like of DAOs, like, and I think that's happening in calls like this, on creating bridges, like, and open channels for people to share news and communication, which don't need to be, you know, strictly related to the project itself. Like they can be and they should, but also to DeFi as a whole and DAOs as a whole, which is what we're doing right now. So like cross-pollination is definitely one of these. The second one is from a pure token perspective. Like you might imagine that people who are gonna eventually mint or get into DeFi plus S, you know, that don't know much about pNT, you know, might get exposure to this basket, which also contains pNT, which probably leads them to actually learn about it, right? Might be, you know, I get over there because I want to have exposure to, I don't know, UMA, LRC, and this other thing. There is pNT in there, like they can see what it is, right? And I think that is going to be, you know, a great way to give it exposure. Like, and I also would say, if DeFi plus S will succeed in attracting TVL in large amounts, that will also means that, you know, a lot of pNT will be aggregated in there. right? Which also makes markets more liquid and also locks a little bit of the supply within the pipes, which is probably a good thing for the PNT token as a whole. And especially if we manage to actually retain governance power, like you might imagine that a lot of people will get exposure to governance in the PNT DAO by holding DeFi plus S, which I think is going to be extremely exciting.
Excellent.
That is great. So
I think Richie also answered the question like about cross-pollination.
Yeah, he's just reconfirming what you just said.
Yeah.
So we are a little low on time. We should probably wrap it up, even though this discussion is really great. If anyone else has any other questions after the call is finished, you could feel free to visit our Telegram channel. It's t.me/pNetworkDeFi, or you can ask a question as a comment under our YouTube channel, or, I know Alessio will be ready for you guys in the PieDAO Discord, and we've shared all those channels in the chat. I'd like to thank you guys. Thank our guest, Alessio Delmonti of PieDAO. Thank the pNetwork team and everyone for attending, watching here on Zoom, YouTube, Telegram, and our new Discord server. We'll be doing this every couple of weeks as we've been, and we will continue to share new updates. So keep an eye out, especially tomorrow for that PNT giveaway. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone. Thanks Alessio.
Catch up soon. Ciao.
Bye.